Phoenix, Arizona, Maryland Elementary School. I went past that wing the other day and remembered her. And I always tell people, if you know the Far Side cartoons, you know, and this lady with the, what do they call that hairdo that goes, you know, beehive, and these glasses that go straight, and then, you know, and she was just like that, she really was, and she was very sweet. And I used to go see them afterwards, like years later, and at their homes, and you'd see them as normal people and not as this god, you know, and they were watching Oprah Winfrey, and they're eating chocolates, and they're, you know, reading the Arizona Republic newspaper, which is really bad, and then you realize that a lot of the way you look at the world has come directly from this person, which is a direct lineage from Oprah Winfrey, you know, and I'm not kidding, and very much of what you believe has come directly from these people. And I mean, Mrs. Melvin was just a normal old, apparently a normal old person, very much affected and influenced by television and you know, popular culture and the current myths about reality, which will change every 5 years or so. And then she taught them to you, and a lot of what you believe comes from them, and that's a certain kind of worldview which is mistaken. It's based on ignorance, and it has been inculcated into you from your earliest days, and those are very hard to get rid of. As you study more Dharma, those will start to change. You know, she didn't tell you about not killing the bugs in your house. You know, she didn't tell you that if you ever lied the least bit, it might destroy your happiness for months. You know, she didn't tell you that every few moments you are creating 65 discrete karmas in your mind. You know, in that much time, we call Jadzoki Kechik, you have about 65 different mental impulses, each of which is creating karma. You know, and she didn't tell you to be careful with your mind. You know, that if you get jealous for a minute, profound changes in your life for the next few months. You see what I mean? She didn't tell you that stuff. You see, they taught you other things, and those worldviews are flatly mistaken. They don't work, and those are learned worldviews. That's one kind of worldview. The other kind of worldview is the one that you're born with. Every creature who is born in samsara, every creature who has a body that must die, meaning amoebas up to Einstein, okay? They all have a basic defect in the way they see the world. And how do I know that? How can I prove that? That defect in the way you see the world creates this body. Okay? This body forms in the womb. The way it forms and the reason it must die is all settled at that moment, and because of certain viewpoints you have in your mind. I was at Don Brown's house yesterday. I never get to see National Geographic, so after he goes to bed I read all his National Geographic. And there was one about aging, you know, and it was very interesting, and there was a long article about it, and then there was an illustrated thing of the body and all the things that are going to fall apart. I'll bring it, and you know, and it was like they went through they started with your hair, you know, why it falls out, why it gets gray, your ears, why they start to, after age 30, they start to actually deteriorate, your eyes, your teeth, and they had a whole chart of this person, and then at the bottom it said, scientists still don't understand why. You know, and I can show you, they're very honest, you know, they say, we don't know why people get old. You know, we know how it happens. We know that at age 30 this happens, at age 35 this happens. But we don't know why. It just starts at that year. We don't know why. It's caused by, ultimately, all of that destruction of your body is caused by a certain internal wrong way of seeing things that you have at the time of conception. And that's responsible for the structure of your body. So the underlying thoughts are called tokche. Tokche means you are misperceiving your world, both in the sense of what you learned from Mrs. Melvin and in the sense of basic misperception that every living being has, who's not a Buddha, okay, or who's not an Arya, okay. So you have those thoughts. Those thoughts are underlying here. And then resting on those thoughts and moving with those thoughts are inner winds, okay. As long as these thoughts are screwy, the inner winds don't work right. That's responsible for your mortality. That's responsible for your physical and mental suffering, you know. And then on top of those internal winds is the gross physical body. And for example, your breathing, okay. If you get into very deep states of meditation, you actually might stop breathing, meaning that the mind has become so pure and calm that the inner airs are moving quite nicely without any need for breathing. By the way, there's also a spaced out meditation you can do that you also stop breathing for a short time. And that has nothing to do with the other one. That's just like taking heroin or something, and it doesn't help you at all. So you gotta, about that, you shouldn't try it, okay? Don't try to go home and, you know, you can try it, doesn't work, right? You know, I tried it. And it's actually, it actually hurts your body. When the time is right, it will come. And you have to be under the guidance of a qualified person. You shouldn't do anything like that. That's not why I'm talking about it. I'm just saying that the practice of Tonglen is very profound because you are already anticipating very secret and very important practices that you can do later. And this is a good preparation for that. You affecting the breathing, working with the breath, is a way to affect the inner winds, which automatically affects the mind. You see what I mean? So you're working backwards. You also have to do work from the other side. So you can work at it from both angles. My boss in my big corporation used to say, take any kind of problem and keep working at it from about 6 different angles, you know. Can't get amethyst from Brazil this week. You know, okay, call that guy in Hong Kong who has an extra supply, you know. Get the guy in Uruguay, you know, checking out that deposit up in the Amazon, you know. Call the guy in Buenos Aires who's connected with the guy in Belo Horizonte up in Minas Gerais in Brazil, and then you get like 6, 7 things going, and then finally the problem gets solved, you know. So you'll be working at it from the outside. You're changing your breathing to affect your inner winds, which actually starts to have a profound effect on your mind, and it's easier to reach bodhicitta. But at the same time, work from the other side, you know. Try to do all the mental practices, mental training, you know. Think about intellectually why people are suffering, you know. Start doing it from the inside. Do meditations called Chegom, where you analyze your condition and the condition of other people, and then from the inside you're working intellectually to get bodhicitta. So you're working at it from the breath, and you're working at it from the inside, with the Lam Rim meditation, for example. And then between those two activities, you can get bodhicitta. You see what I mean? And this is the very profound thing about Tonglen. I wanted to read you a verse. There's a famous 2 lines of a book that was written by Tome Sambo. His date's here, 1295 to 1369, okay? He has 2 lines in a very famous Lojong text called the Dunduma, the 7 points. And I'll read it to you. I'll read you the lines. They're very brief. The point is that these lines are so important that some lamas have made it a practice. You know, you can do these tantric retreats where you recite a certain number of mantras, like 100,000 or 200,000 or something like that. They actually took these two lines and made a retreat out of it. You know, they repeated these two lines 100,000 times or something like that. There's another practice where you can do it all day long, and we'll talk about that. Okay. So the lines are Tonglen'97 Disc04 Deni Lungla Kyunde Ja. Okay, and you can. They're so holy you can just make a mantra out of it and recite them. Okay. It'll be in your reading, okay? I'll say it again. Tonglen'97 Disc04 Deni Lungla Kyunde Ja. In English, it's alternate the two of giving and taking. Let these same ride on the wind, okay? Let these ride upon the wind, okay? There's two versions. One that says, let these same ride on the wind, and some say, let these two ride on the wind. Nowadays, they're saying it that way. But the point is, taking right first. Do some taking meditation, and then do some giving meditation, and connect it to your breathing. Okay, connect it to your breathing. That's the root text. There are great commentaries. There'll be one in your reading by Pabonka Rinpoche, in the book that's called Liberation in Your Hands. And he says something interesting. He says, this meditation, by the way, has parallels in the practice of the recitation of the diamond, which is part of the secret teachings. This is also what the great Kedubje was one of the two most famous disciples of Jetsun Kappa, has in mind in his famed lines of praise. Kedubje wrote a poem to his teacher, and there's a very famous two lines from that, so I'm going to give them to you in Tibetan. It's Gombo Kyuki Shegi Uktsam Tada Dola Membe Gyurkyurna. Gombo means, oh Savior, you know, oh my Savior. Kyuki Shelki Uktsam. Even a single puff of breath from your lips, from your holy lips, you know, it's like, okay. Tada Dola Membe Gyurkyurna has profound beneficial effects on every single living being, okay? Every time you, Jetsun Kappa, breathe out once, you know, and he does it rather often, or maybe not so often, it helps an infinite number of living beings. So he's referring to the fact, and then I have another commentary here from, who is that? Trijang Rinpoche, who was Pabonka Rinpoche's student, and who was the teacher of the current Dalai Lama, and who was my root Lama's root Lama. They start talking about where can you find this information in the sutras, you know, where did the Buddha teach these things? And they start pulling up some sutras that talk about when a Buddha's walking around, even their breath has very great repercussions. As they breathe, and as the molecules of breath are pushed out into the atmosphere, certain repercussions are taking place. Certain energies or vibrations are being transmitted to all living beings, even as they breathe. Like, they make a big point that a Buddha's breath is not a wasted thing. You know, even as a Buddha breathes, then there's an effect of that air that comes out and touches. It eventually is affecting all living beings. So even just the breathing of a Buddha. And Pabonka Rinpoche says there are lots of instruction books about these two lines that Kedubje was speaking about, and I can't tell you anything about them, you know, because he's speaking to a very large public audience. And it means that we are getting very close to some very profound secret teachings. And from then on, you need to be introduced to it by your secret Lama. Okay, I mean, you will find a secret Lama. They will come to you. They will teach you secret teachings, and that's left for them. That's their job. Okay. How do you find them? I mean, mainly, you have to keep your vows. You know, you have to learn Bodhisattva vows. You have to learn how to live ethically, which we call pratimoksha vows, and you have to learn them, and you have to take them, and you have to keep them carefully. And that sets up the causes to meet this person, okay? And then they come to you. Uh, and that's a requirement. You can never get it any other way. You can go pay $28 and hear, get a special initiation from so-and-so who came from India, and they wear a nice hat and they ring a nice bell and something happens and they leave the next day and you don't know what happened. And that's not a secret. Secret is secret, and they will come to you, but it's only caused by your karma. You have to be pure enough to meet them, and you can't force it. You see what I mean? You can't go to India and pay good American dollars and demand this thing, which is very American, right? You have to pay your purity to get those things, and that's learning your vows and keeping them, and then they will come to you. Okay, it's a lot harder actually. Okay, but there's profound connection between this practice and the highest secret teachings. You must aspire to those things. I mean, don't be wimpy and don't be embarrassed and don't be shy. There are extraordinary teachings. You must work to get them because it's the only way you can get enlightened in this lifetime. Okay, you must seek them, mainly by being pure and trying to find a Lama who has those qualities. And then you have to try to reach those things. It's irresponsible not to. You see what I mean? You are, don't underestimate your abilities. As soon as you're ready, and as soon as you're pure enough, you have to try to seek those teachings and try to follow them, and try to get enlightened in this lifetime. I think a lot of Americans, their only relation to the secret teachings is they've gone to some initiations and they might be doing some sadhanas, and they know a little bit about their vows or something, and that's as far as they go. You actually have to learn the sadhanas, you have to practice them seriously, you have to study your vows carefully, you have to track those vows on an hour-to-hour basis through your day. And then you have to try very hard, very quickly to get up to the higher secret teachings because you don't have much time. So, don't be one of those people that goes and demands these teachings the first week they became a Buddhist, But also don't be one of those people that started cruising and waiting and their life is, they're getting old, and their life will finish. And it takes time, and frankly it takes a lot of energy. You have to be physically healthy to do a lot of those practices, so you don't have much time. Your body is not waiting for you. Your body is, deteriorating quite steadily and quite mercilessly, and every day you wait is lost time. You may not be healthy enough to do those, to get where you have to go, and you have to try to do it now. Okay, it's all very much related to Tonglen. If you do Tonglen seriously, you got a good jump start. Okay, on the highest teachings. Okay.
Question, Michael.
Yeah.
Are the tantric practices really something though that lay people can do?
He asked if tantric practices are for lay people. They were invented for lay people. The first tantra taught in this world was designed for kings in India who were too busy to do this slow lam rim stuff. I mean, of course they mastered the lam rim, but of course, absolutely, yeah. You don't have to be ordained to practice those things at all. It's very democratic. Okay. Then he quotes Aryadeva. Aryadeva lived 200 A.D. and it's a beautiful line. It says, "The Buddhas never move the slightest twitch unless it serves great purpose. Even the slightest breath from their lips is but sheer help to living kind." They're trying to establish that this practice has been going on ever since the time of the Buddha, and you can read that in your reading. Then he's writing a beautiful praise of Pabonka Rinpoche. This is Trijang Rinpoche, okay, which is our direct lineage. You know, this is the teacher of the Dalai Lama, the present Dalai Lama. And he says, I just like the sentence, okay, it's a little long, okay. I'll read it to you in English. There's absolutely no need for me to mention here those major, far-reaching sacred deeds of his, capital H, Pabonka Rinpoche, right, his teacher. Holy body, speech, and mind. Even the slightest fraction of his high actions represent infinite and inconceivable secret qualities of divine actions, words, and thoughts. And this is true even down to the way he breathes, constantly practicing the meditation on giving and taking for the benefit of all others, even all day long while he breathes. Constantly repeating the song of the utterance of emptiness, a spontaneous hymn of the holy sound of nada. And this is, he's trying to say that his root Lama is, he's doing Tonglen all day long. Every breath he takes, he's thinking about Tonglen. You know, that's really cool. Okay. Then Trijang Rinpoche gets into a verse by Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti, and this was copped by Jetsun Kappa later. And it goes, Kading Wambo Kala Durdurne Namshing Rando Dipe Dokirki Namka Sepe Dopa Mingyurshin Kyuki Yenden Jaban Detarla, which means, you know, Garuda birds. These are these huge mythical birds, like a phoenix. And he says they take off and fly away in the sky. And they're trying to see if they can reach the end of the sky. And so they fly and fly. Maybe 2 days they're flying, you know. And finally they start to wear out. And they realize that they haven't reached the end of the sky. So they have to turn back and come home again, because it's just too exhausting, you know. So there's this big deal about that the Garudas, these birds, they don't turn back because the sky ran out. They turn back because they got tired. And he's comparing, and Jetsun Kappa, this seems to be a theme throughout Buddhist literature. They're talking about their lamas and the important quality of their lamas in terms of their breath. You see what I mean? And the sky is a symbol for the breath. The empty sky is a symbol for the breath of the holy being, of the Lama. And the student is trying to explore and to understand what these Lamas are doing with their breath. You know, what kind of level of Tonglen are they on? You see what I mean? And the student sits and thinks about it, and the student tries to describe it in words, and it's like a bird trying to fly to the end of the sky. And then sooner or later, just can't do it anymore, and you have to turn around and come back. You can't reach, in our level, a knowledge of their of what they're doing with their breath. You see what I mean? And it's very beautiful. And that's how Trijang Rinpoche describes his Lama. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Then there's another part. It's really beautiful. Let me see who it's by. This is by Changyur Rinpoche. Changyur Rinpoche was... there are two very famous Changyur Rinpoches. Three, really. And this Rinpoche was the teacher of the Chinese emperor, to the Emperor of China. The first one. And it became a tradition that they taught the Chinese emperors. And there was a Tibetan Buddhist temple connected to the palaces of the Chinese emperor, and they would come and teach the emperor Buddhism. Changyur Rinpoche was one of the first and most important ones. And they would be given a special title by the Chinese emperor, and they would become the teacher and the tutor of the emperor. The first Changyur wrote some beautiful prayers about Tonglen, and I'll go over those with you. The second Changyur wrote a very famous 4-volume set explaining all Buddhist philosophy from every school's point of view, and it's very beautiful if you can study it sometime. In Namgyal Monastery, which is His Holiness's private monastery, they don't study the 5 great books that we do in the other great monasteries. They just study Changyur's one book because it's got everything. And they study that 4-volume text. That's their curriculum mainly. So there was a Lama born around 1878, I think, in Tibet, and he was recognized as the next Chankya. But Chinese were very unpopular in Tibet at the time. There was some tension going on. So his teachers decided it might actually be dangerous to announce that he was the Chankya. So a great Lama had just passed away in a small retreat facility outside of Lhasa, and that it was on a great, it's on a great boulder. There's actually this huge, this retreat hermitage built on top of this crag, and the crag in Tibetan is called Pabong, and that boulder was called Pabong Ka, and the abbot was called Pabong Kapa, and so they said, let's call him Pabong Ka, and declare him the reincarnation of this abbot of this hermitage, you know. So really, Pabong Rinpoche, who wrote Liberation in Our Hands, is the next Chankya. He was the next Chankya. So here's Chankya. All right. Now we know who he really is. All right. He says, when you're doing the taking practice, try to imagine the fact that the negativity you're taking from that person. Like this morning, I did myself around Tuesday when I have to call this lady who I know is very mad at me. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to take away my mental affliction before it happens, you know. I'm trying to set myself up for it, you know. And I know it's not going to happen this evening because she doesn't know where I am, and I don't have to call her till Tuesday. So I'm like taking this mental, he says, take that mental affliction and focus on it and realize that that few minutes of mental affliction, if that, it creates a karmic seed. When at the moment of death, your mind contacts one of the karmic seeds in your mind. You have millions of karmic seeds in your mind. At the moment of death, one of them is called, it's called Bakchak Sepa. One of them is activated. If you know, if it's bad luck, you're going to activate that one. And that creates the cause for you to be born in a lower realm, for example. You see what I mean? It's very crucial at the moment of death that you die right, and you try to pick one of the good karmic seeds. But if you have this karmic seed of getting angry at this woman on Tuesday in your mind, there's some chance that that will be the one activated. You see what I mean? So he says, think in those terms. Remember that if you are able to at least prevent this one seed, you might be, you know, destroying the seed or preventing the seed that could have been the one that got activated when you die. So this is a very serious practice. You know, you are actually trying to prevent a karmic seed that if you don't prevent it, that could be the one that gets activated when you die. So he says, you know, be very selective. Go after the most serious karmic seeds that you might be collecting during the week, okay? Then he says, he makes the point that he goes into why should you connect this practice to your breath. And he says, you know, all of us Buddhists, ever since the time of Vasubandhu, this is 16 centuries ago, have been doing breathing meditation. You see? It's a practice to watch your breath. Why? Normally there's only one reason to watch your breath in Buddhist meditation. That is to prepare yourself for a meditation session. That's why we do it the first thing, right? I should have said next before I did anything this morning, right? I should have started saying next. And you should have said, let's see, what's first? Breathing, you know. Why? The function of breathing meditation, primary function, is to get your mind off of your work, off of your family, off of your outer life, and to start focusing inwards. I compare it to putting the car in neutral before you put it in forward. You know, you back out of your driveway, and when you're first learning to drive, you say, well, I guess I can go straight from R to D, you know, and you go ring, and then the you know, the gears go ring, you know, and you know, you're like, and then your teacher says, no, you have to go to neutral first, you know, while the car's still moving, you can't go from R to D, you have to go to N. And so breathing meditation is in. Breathing meditation is neutral. It truly is neutral, meaning there isn't any big virtue to watching your breath. I'm sure there are many animals that can focus on their breath better than we can. The point is only to get the mind into neutral before you do some important practice. So to make a whole lifetime's practice out of watching your breath is an error. It's a mistake. It was not intended to be like that. It's intended to be a practice that you do to calm your mind down, to get it into neutral, and then you got to go to D. You can't stay in N your whole life. You'll never get anywhere, right? So D is drive, and then you actually undertake some meditation with some content. Okay. So he's saying here, one of the great benefits to Tonglen is that because every good Buddhist has been doing this breathing preliminary for many years, the minute you get into watching your breath, your concentration will buckle down. You say buckle down? You've been doing this breathing as a preliminary for a long time. So the minute you start connecting it to a compassion practice, your concentration will turn on because you're already used to that. You see what I mean? So he's saying one of the great benefits of connecting your breath to Tonglen is not only the profound effect it has on your mind, but also you'll be able to concentrate much better during the meditation because you're watching your breath. Okay, that's one of the big benefits of connecting it to your breath. There's a big debate about whether you use both nostrils or what, in the secret teachings, in one part of the secret teachings, you're taught to do this practice by alternating your nostrils, and there's a significance to that, and it's important to learn how to do that, and it's important not to do that until you're taught that. Okay, so don't do it. Okay, it's in the reading very briefly because I can't put secret stuff in readings like that. But you will see a mention of giving the breath out with your right nostril, sending it into their left nostril, their suffering coming out of their right nostril and coming into your left nostril. And that has an importance, and you have to learn that from a qualified Lama. So I wanted you to know that you might run into an explanation like that. You shouldn't try it until you have a qualified person explain it to you, okay? And if you're like me, the only time I can breathe out my left nostril, not my right one, is if I have a big booger over here, So, don't worry about it, You can learn it from some qualified person someday. And if you see it, don't try it until, you'll just mess it up. And, it's like some kind of piano playing or something. To try it on your own without having a teacher is silly. It would just come out like worse than chopsticks or whatever. So use both of your nostrils for now, okay? That's the end of the section of the reading you're going to get on, there's a lot more detail there about the breath, and you can read it in the reading if we can ever get it printed out. We're still having printer problems, so it's okay, yeah, all right. So we'll have a new batch for you tomorrow morning. It has to be prepared during lunch and afterwards. So please take a break now, and then we'll do one more meditation, okay? Section of the reading that you'll get after the one about the details about the breath is about whose suffering do you take on? You see, what's the nature of the suffering that you're going to take when you breathe in? Okay, and there are a lot of sorry. I usually hide the one so nobody can hear what I'm saying during the break. Okay. Okay. The nature of the suffering that you take in when you breathe in. There are a couple of things to say about it, and we tried to collect all those readings together in one place. So, the kinds of suffering you can take, we can divide into what we call causal and resulting. You know what I mean? When, for example, you're taking bad karma from people, but you're taking bad karma in the sense of their mental afflictions and their bad deeds, and then you're taking bad karma in the sense of the suffering they're going to get from those things. You see what I mean? You can take bad karma that's already gone off, or bad karma that hasn't gone off yet. You see what I mean? So when you take in, you can make a choice. You can say, I'll take in the bad karma that they're going to collect new, meaning their bad thoughts, bad words, bad activities. This is what we've been doing in this practice here. We've been focusing on ourselves, and personally I've been taking away bad thoughts that I know I'm going to have before they happen. You see what I mean? So you can do that, and that's called focusing on causal suffering. This is suffering about to happen. You can also focus on people and take away the suffering which has already gone off, bad karma which is already ripened. And that's like people's illnesses, people's mental problems, depression, any kind of physical illness. You can take that away also. There's another category that is so important that they do Tonglen separately on it, and that's called Dipa. Dipa means spiritual obstacles, spiritual blocks. Like you get a writer's block, you can't write something for a whole day, or you have a mental block. We were talking about it, about taxes, like I have some kind of thing, and a lot of my friends have it. We know math, and the money was already taken out of my paycheck. It's there, you know what I mean? But there's this mental block about doing it, there's this thing about February, whatever it is, what is it, April 15th, you see? And it's just there's this block, it's a block, it's some kind of, you get up to that thing and you just don't want to do it, I don't know. And you're not in trouble, you have the money and everything, but you just don't want to do it. It's just an hour or something, but it's just something about it. That's a mental block. You can have a writer's block. But there are spiritual blocks, you see? There are spiritual blocks that you have. And these are very, very subtle and very bad. Like you be in a room and that person will be describing how you can stop your death. And you get distracted, or you just can't concentrate. There's some kind of problem with your focus, or I've had students sit in class for 3-4 years and then just not get it. You know what I mean? You're trying to explain something, and because of a spiritual block, it just doesn't register. You see, they can repeat the words to you. They can say, you talked about Tonglen, you were talking about this and this and this. And then I'll say, well, did you try it? And they'll say, well, I'm really going to. Or the book, the book we do where you keep your... I have many older Dharma students, I'll say, you were in that teaching, 6 months ago, how's your book going? And they'll say, well, I did it for a couple of weeks and then I just kind of pooped out. And these are spiritual blocks. They're very serious. And so there is a practice of, you take away people's karma that they're about to do or they're just doing now in mind, speech, or body, and you take it away before it even starts. And then the second kind is you take away the karma which has already gone off in the form of sickness or aging or anything else. But the third one, very important, you take away their spiritual obstacles. Okay? And this is called Rinpoche. Rinpoche means there are certain orders in which you do the meditation. One of the orders is people. Okay, the people, you can call it the people order. Okay, and it means you'll have the whole reading in your hands, okay, and you can read it and you'll know how it goes. But roughly it's like this. You start with yourself. You always start the Len in Tonglen with yourself, okay? And most people never learn that. It's important to begin with the person in whose happiness you are most invested. And that's you, okay? And you'll put some enthusiasm into it, you see what I mean? The enthusiasm of self-cherishing, which we all have. And it's admitted by the lamas. They say, look, we have self-cherishing, might as well take advantage of it. Let's start Tonglen with ourselves. And so you start, in the beginning, as you do this practice for the next few weeks, if you make it a daily practice, start with yourself. And do it if you're meditating in the morning, do it for the afternoon or the evening. If you're meditating in the evening, do it for the next morning, up till noon. You see what I mean? Only go 4 or 5 waking hours ahead. And see yourself, and again, with the preliminaries and with the Tonglen, make it very, very specific. Don't ever, please, in the early days of American Buddhism, let's not make it empty ritual till later, okay? You know what I mean? It'll get there, but let's let the first generation have a live practices, live rituals, that have meaning, and picture yourself very specifically, and picture the room you're in, picture the chair you're in, picture the face of the person who's yelling at you, and it's very powerful that way. It works, okay? So first you'll be taking away that. Then when you get pretty strong, go out a week, like we just did, okay? Go out for a week and try to see what will be the worst thing that will happen this week. Then go out for a month, and we'll try that next. We'll try it before we go to lunch, okay? We'll do a very short one before we go to lunch. Go out a month and try to figure out what will be the biggest challenge in the next month, and take that pain away from you. Then do a year, and eventually you get up to your life, like you do your life. In the secret teachings, frankly, don't tell anybody, I told you no. You work a lot on your death, in advance. You do a lot of Tonglen on your death. And there is an open teaching that I can show you that is in your reading if we ever translate it on time, okay? But this is where you are preparing to do Tonglen at your death, okay? So you do that. You prepare for that moment, and you prepare to do Tonglen at that moment. That's to prevent any bad karmas from being selected at that moment, okay? It's very important that you practice so that you can select the right karma at that moment. That moment is very, very chaotic. It is the most, if you think our office in New York is bad, on a bad day, with phones going off and people yelling and 3 people having nervous breakdown somewhere and somebody being angry at somebody else and this jealousy current going around the room and you just feel like, ooh. Death is a million times worse. At that moment, unless you've really practiced a lot, unless you've gone over that scenario thousands of times during your life already, you won't be able to do much. Also, physically, you are very disabled at that moment, obviously. And that affects your winds, and that affects your thoughts. You see what I mean? The body is breaking down. That disrupts the winds. And that totally disrupts the thoughts, and you have a lot of hallucinations at that point because of the connection between the winds and the body. So you have to prepare for that. You have to do a lot of Tonglen on that poor guy who's going to be laying on that bed at that moment. And it's important to do Tonglen for him or her. Then you do Tonglen for your bardo. You're going to be in a spirit. Unless you're successful in your Buddhism, which, I really hope you are. I really hope I am. If you're successful in your practice in this life, the following doesn't apply to you. The death thing, the bardo thing, doesn't apply to you. You won't need it. You'll be in a different place already. But you practice doing it in the bardo, and then you practice doing it as you're reborn. Okay, you practice it for your future life. So this is the order of Tonglen for yourself, and you should practice this for the next few weeks. Okay. Personally, I've found that doing in the morning, the afternoon, has given me enough material for the last 4 months. I didn't get past that yet. Okay, you might find the same thing. There's plenty of stuff to deal with this afternoon to do Tonglen on. You know what I mean? It's not like you're going to run out of irritating people in the afternoon. You know? Okay. That's in New York. We have a really great supply. You know, and we're lucky that way. So it'll be enough material for you. When you get pretty good at that, and we'll try it tomorrow, you go on to someone that you love very much. You choose the person who in this life is closest to you. You know, the person, it could be your spouse, it could be a son or a daughter, you know, it could be a very close spiritual friend, and you start to take away their suffering. Okay, it's very important to go to someone that you really, really love. Okay. Should you go on to your Lama? You know, is it appropriate for people in this room, for example, to attempt to take away Lama Sopa's diabetes or something? He's just been diagnosed with serious diabetes. Should you try to do Tonglen on Lama Sopa? The texts, and we'll talk about it later, are adamant that that's ridiculous. Okay, why? He's an enlightened being. His body is made of light and shining and will be that way forever. And you see, to say he's sick would be to say that his winds are screwed up, which is to say his mind still has self-cherishing and doesn't understand empty. You see what I mean? So it's the implications of thinking of your Lama as being truly sick are very bad for your practice. You know, you can say, my Lama is pretending to be sick. My Lama is displaying some kind of illness to teach us about impermanence, and may even one day. Never mind. Anyway, but it's not for real. Okay, in the Mahayana, we don't believe that it's not for real. Okay, to say that Lama is being sick is to say that their channels are not in order, and to say their channels is not in order is to say they don't understand emptiness and they haven't seen these things, and that's impossible. It's not true. So you cannot do Tonglen with your lamas, okay, or with an enlightened being, okay. Then there's then you go to people that you like, but you don't like very much love them, okay? Right? You know, people you feel good about. You know, like I have friends at work that we've worked together for many years, and we feel good about each other, and then you do Tonglen with them. Len, right? Then you go on to people who are neutral, people that you don't care much about either way. I have 49 of them every night on the bus home. You know, New Jersey Transit commuter bus, 2 hours. I always have this supply of neutral people, you know. Like, they don't know me, I don't know them. In New York, you never talk to anybody. And they're totally neutral to me, you know. And I always use the guys on the bus, you know. The poor guys sleeping, trying to recover from the work day so they can go home and sleep and come back. You know what I mean? So I always use them. Then start with somebody that you slightly don't like. Okay, like someone who irritates you slightly. And then go on to someone who irritates you a medium amount, and then go to your favorite person of all that you can't stand their guts, and do Tonglen with them. But the scriptures say it's not smart to jump straight to the person you don't like, okay? I mean, it's sort of embarrassing as a Buddhist to admit you don't like somebody, but I think you can find someone at least who irritates you pretty well. Okay, and then as you get better at Tonglen, then you can go on to them. Somebody once asked me, I don't really know whether the people around me are Buddhas or not. You know what I mean? Like, anyone around you could be an enlightened being. You kind of have to do Tonglen on the basis of what you understand about them now. You see what I mean? You don't know that any person you meet is not a Buddha, and you have to be very careful because of that fact. But in the meantime, conventionally you are seeing them a certain way, and until such time as you're able to see them as a Buddha, it's okay to do Tonglen with them. You might make a boo-boo. You might find out 5 years from now that Joe Schmo was Maitreya in disguise, and here you were doing Tonglen with them, but it won't be wasted effort, okay? It was based on your perceptions at the moment, and that's valid, okay? So that's the order as far as people, okay? Then you do the order, if you like, you can do geographic. We call it geographic, which means, well, I won't call it geographic, let's call it realmic, okay? Because there is a geographic one later. Realmic means you start with the hell beings. You start with people in hell. There are hells taught in Buddhism. Some Western teachers and people, Tibetans teaching to Westerners, have tried to soften that fact and say, oh, these are psychological states, it's hell to be with your wife sometimes, and stuff like that, They've tried to present it in a more palatable way. Lama Supa, I think, is quite the opposite. The truth is that there really are hells. They are not psychological states. They are not bad days on this earth. They do exist. Can I show them to you? No. Should you accept them fully until you see them? Maybe not. Would the Buddha teach them over and over again just for effect? No. Can you come logically to a place where you can understand the nature of a hell realm and prove logically that they exist? Yes. Okay? Without going to a hell realm, without meeting a hell realm being, if you study Buddhism carefully, you can establish that hells do exist, and that you could go to one, and that there are people right now in those places. And so you do Tonglen for those beings first, okay? This is realm order, okay? You take away their suffering. Suffering in hells are mainly heat and cold. You pretty much have a choice in the hell of being burned constantly or freezing very badly. And there's a thing about hell realm karma is that the body doesn't obey, in the sense that when you get to a temperature that you should die, or you don't die. You see, the body will not die. It keeps going, and you keep having suffering, okay? Then you go to a realm called the pretas. They call them hungry ghosts. I always thought about Casper running around without any breakfast cereal or something, and it's not like that, okay? These are beings with, there are such beings. They don't have bodies like us. They can be in this room right now. You can't see, they do have physical bodies. The body, the material of those bodies is very fine and very difficult to see. And you can become aware of them. They do exist, okay? And they have this strange karma that they can never be satisfied. You see, they can't get things. They want things and they can't get enough to eat. They keep running around trying to find more things to eat, and something always happens and they have a problem with that. This is a karmic result of being dissatisfied in this life, of chasing money and food and other objects of desire. Especially, I think, gluttony. Americans, it's not considered sophisticated to talk about gluttony. You don't hear gluttony discussed in New Yorker magazine or anything. I read a Christian book. It was a sweet book by C.S. Lewis called The Screw Tape Letters. But anyway, the devil was taking credit for getting people not to think about the concept of gluttony in the modern world. You know, he was saying this is one of his great achievements in the modern world, is that people don't talk about how wrong it is and how unhealthy it is to be obsessed with food and to eat thoughtlessly. You know what I mean? Americans are very good at it. I'm good at it, you know, but just to keep eating when there's no reason to eat and hurt your body, you know, and have all the diseases that come from eating too much that you really don't need, and then even depriving other people in the world of resources that they need, that they don't have enough to eat. And here we're just eating, you know. We're eating because we feel nervous or something, you know, and that would result in a preta birth, you know, I like to call them craving spirits or something like that. The next, so you take away their suffering, you know what I mean? You try to take away their suffering. Can you see them? No. Are you sure they exist? The Buddhist logic texts say, if you say you're sure, you're not a Buddhist logician. You see what I mean? If you're going to be honest, and you're going to be a good Buddhist thinker, you have to say, I'm not sure if these things exist. But all the lamas say they do. All the great scholars, all the great saints of Buddhism say they do. So I'll work on that assumption for right now. But if you ask me, do I know for sure, I have to say no. Okay? And that, the Buddha demanded that Buddhists should talk like that. You know, the Buddha demanded that we remain in the realm of provability, okay? And the rest you have to say, I think there probably are spirits like that. The Buddha described them in great detail, but I haven't personally seen those things yet. You have to say it like that, okay? I'll take away their suffering on the basis that all these great lamas said it's important, okay? Next one is animals, which we can see. And you take away the suffering of animals. Americans are funny, you know. They have this. They're obsessed with the idea of animals that could be friendly. You know, like Lassie and what's that dolphin's name? Flipper. You know, and you know, it almost seems like it's considered nice in our culture if you think of the deer as living in great beautiful harmony with the beautiful little birds chirping, and you know, nature is idealized. Like you go out into the woods and there's this beautiful fawn and she looks up with her brown eyes at Mr. Sparrow, who looks down, and then Mr. Bluebird comes and speaks, you know, and Bunny Rabbit, you know, is happily running around. Forget it, you know, forget it. Why do animals run away when you show up, you know? Because it's their entire existence is spent running from the things which will eat them. You know, birds don't fly away because you have bad breath or something. They see you as a life-threatening thing, and they spend every minute of the day in fear. You know, this is the life of an animal. You know, with the exception of a few dogs that live with humans or something, the animals out in nature and in the ocean are in a cutthroat struggle for survival, and they must stay aware. And if their awareness slips for a few minutes, they're food. You know what I mean? And it's not fun. And it's not some kind of communing with nature or something. Forget it. It sounds nice. It doesn't work that way. You know, it's a deadly struggle to stay alive, and it hurts. You know, and when they get a bad tooth, they can't go to a dentist. You know, they go around the rest of their life with the pain. So they live in great pain, constant pain. After the first few, you know, weeks of their life or months of their life, their body has all those pains that doctors fix in you, and they never go away. And they're constantly looking over their shoulder. It's not a fun realm to be in. Then humans, you take away the suffering of humans. The order in the scriptures is actually, there's a being called a pleasure being, Deva. You cannot see them. They live a long time. They sit in like heavenly places, and they just chill out there. Okay? This is a result of doing some kind of actually mistaken spiritual practice, like watching your breath a lot, okay? Like sitting your whole life and doing breath meditation would lead you to this thing called pleasure being. You can't see them. They exist in this world. They exist on another plane that you can't see. And they sit there and they're happy most of their life. They have very long lives. And they're very peaceful. And it seems like a good place to be. It's a result of doing a lot of meditation in this life, but without any content. For example, just watching your breath. Why do you get to be a pleasure being if you do a lot of meditation in this life? It's called Samtengi Domba. Samtengi Domba means, in a sense, you have taken morality vows when you go into meditation. Why?
You can't commit a bad crime.
You can't do a bad crime, you know, okay? Why? Well, the first three are physical, right? Killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. You're sitting there on a cushion, okay? Unless you're Milarepa who can kill somebody with your thoughts, okay? Which was a mistake, right? He corrected himself later. You're not going to hurt anybody when you're sitting on a cushion, okay? You're not going to tell any lies because you're not talking. And you can't have any of the big three mental bad deeds, craving, ill will, and wrong view. Because if you did, you couldn't be in meditation. You see what I mean? Those would destroy your meditation. So, I mean, if they're active at that moment. So really, if you stay in meditation most of your life, by default, you don't collect a lot of the bad karma that most of us do just when we open our mouths, okay? And that can lead you to this birth. This birth is really nice. You can hang out there, chill out there. It's very pleasant. It's like Donald Trump plus, you know. And then it ends. And there's this phenomenon that the good karma wears out, leaving you with only bad karma. You see what I mean? The nature of that realm is that you use up your good karma by being there, you see? And then the only thing you have left is very serious bad karma from before. And then there's a flow chart, you know, in the scriptures. And those beings always go very, very far down. Like it's almost sure that they will go to a hell birth after that, okay? By a process of default. So you don't want to get there. You do not want to make that mistake. You don't want to sit and meditate on your breath your whole life and get to one of these places, because it's just a temporary stop to a hell realm. You might as well go straight to hell. Do not pass go, you know. So you take away their suffering, which is mostly some kind of dull ignorance about their condition, okay? And then most of the scriptures say work on people last, because people want so much stuff. You know, I mean, people have such special suffering, you can take away their suffering. Or you can do it in the order of putting them before the pleasure beings, okay? That's realmic. Now geographic, the last one, and then we'll do a short meditation. Geographically, there's a meditation where you can start on the west coast and work to the east coast or something like that, okay? And just do everything. You know, do the dogs in LA, then do the lizards in Arizona, you know, and then go to Nevada and do everybody who's losing money in Las Vegas, you know, and you know, it's kind of fun. You can do it that way. It is in the Abhidharma Kosha that way. There's called a meditation called rotting, and you do it that way. That's another story. But you can do it. By the way, it's good to spice up your meditation sometimes. You see what I mean? Change every once in a while. You know, you do a geographic one every 10 days or so. You know, do one session for geography. And start with friends you know on the West Coast and then work to the East Coast or something like that. You know, it's good to spice up your meditation once in a while. If you find that you're getting dried out on a certain way of doing Tonglen, you can switch to a different way. But don't switch so often that you don't get good at it. You see what I mean? You have to do Majjhimika. You have to do middle way. Don't do it over and over again one way so that you get bored and dried out. And don't skip around all the time so that you don't get good at one way. You see what I mean? So you have to judge for yourself. Don't get dried out on it. Stop before you get bored with it. Change to a different way of doing it. But don't change every day so you don't get good at any one way of doing it. You see what I mean? Okay.